2022 feels like the year of the boomer shooter. I imagine aside from a few devout fans, a lot of people who watch my videos, and honestly, myself included, have probably found their way to this genre in just the last few years. Which is totally fine, of course. I mean, there wasn't like a whole lot going on prior to 2019, but with the release of some games like Dusk and Ultrakill, I think a lot of people have seen the massive potential of this genre, developers included. In fact, developers especially. 2021 was marked by demos, announcements, and all sorts of interesting looking retro FPS Steam pages and Twitter accounts popping up. But if that was the case, then 2022 was like the proverbial floodgates opening. I swear, every week another game that I had on my radar is coming out, and it's not looking like it's going to stop anytime soon. We are firmly in the retro FPS renaissance now, and the genre has delivered so many games that I want to talk about and just don't have the time for each and every one of them. But as I thought back about 2022 and some of the amazing shooters that released, I realized there was a theme of this year. 2022 was not only marked by a ton of boomer shooters releasing, but it was actually more like the year the genre truly broke free of the boomer part. Sure, there was a lot of great games that came out that evoked classic titles like Doom, Quake, and Blood, as there always is, but more and more of this genre is starting to break free of those chains and produce truly fantastic and innovative titles that stand on their own. I've talked about plenty of these on this channel already, like Ultrakill, Cruelty Squad, and Turbo Overkill, but there are so many games out there that deserve as much attention as these other games for the ways they're innovating, iterating, and pushing the genre forward. So that's what I'm going to be doing, is talking about a few of these games, the unique elements they bring to the table, and the ways I see them pushing this genre forward. So consider this not just a video to highlight some amazing games, but also a celebration of this awesome genre and how far it came in this year of the boomer shooter. So before I talk about this first game, there is some interesting context to this one. When you think about my channel, you probably think about Ultrakill, and I don't blame you. If you sort my channel videos by most popular, the entire top row is basically just Ultrakill. I do a lot more other stuff as well, but my videos with the highest visibility are definitely far and away Ultrakill videos. But what if I told you I recently had a stupid little video that absolutely blew any of my Ultrakill videos out of the water in terms of the views it got? And in a short window of time, no less. Of course, it wasn't on this channel. It was on my relatively new Clips channel, but that's beside the point. This video titled, "This is the most ridiculous boss of all time," showing off one of the bosses from the game Fashion Police Squad, somehow got 250,000 views and counting. It's more than Minos Prime, it's more than the greatest Dark Souls boss of all time, it's more than the Bloodborne boss that killed me 175 times. But let's back up a bit. Fashion Police Squad is a game that I reviewed the demo of a few months ago, and long story short, I liked it, but I needed to see more from it to say for sure that it would be great. But man, oh man, did the game deliver on that and then some. If you told me the corniest and most obnoxiously PG shooter game ever made would blow some amazing titles like Prodeus and Postal Brain Damage completely out of the water as likely my favorite new boomer shooter of the year, I would not have believed you. Yet, here we are. I honestly think part of my overwhelming love for Fashion Police Squad comes from the fact that it isn't another boomer shooter set in hell or some hell-adjacent setting. Not that I don't love plenty of games like that, but goddamn is there just so many of them. Of course, Fashion Police Squad, which if you haven't already noticed is perhaps not so subtly a backronym for FPS, is not just different in setting from your average FPS game, it sort of completely laughs in the face of it. The game is as colorful, cutesy, and overtly PG as it can possibly be without just saying, yes, this is satire, you. In fact, subtlety is a word you may as well just completely check at the door here. But the fact of the matter is that if you can get past the palette consisting of more than just red and brown, the general lack of crispy crunchiness, gibs, and gore, I think you'll find an extremely competent and even pretty bold take on a Doom Eternal-esque FPS here to enjoy. I hate to evoke such a well-known and somewhat divisive comparison, but more so than other retro FPS games where you juggle a bunch of weapons and move fast, Fashion Police Squad much more specifically adopts Doom Eternal's puzzle-esque gameplay, and even iterates on it further, in a sense. Each of your guns perform a specific fashion-related function, whether it's adding color to dull and gray clothing, taking color out of clothing that's too bright, or stitching a suit that fits too loose. And before a case can be considered, complete, you have to fix whatever is wrong with the enemy. Fashion criminals fit. In practice, this is very much like Doom Eternal's weapon and enemy combos, but even more streamlined and refined. to the point where you basically have to use a certain gun to deal with certain enemies. Now, if this doesn't sound appealing to you, I do have some good news. I sort of thought the same originally. In fact, it was one of my criticisms of the demo when I first played it. I was worried that the rigid weapon system would lead to the game's gimmick getting stale really fast. I'm happy to report it couldn't be any less of an issue here. You see, even though this system doesn't have the depth of Doom Eternal necessarily, or the freedom to experiment of something like Ultrakill, there is still something deeply satisfying and occasionally quite challenging about solving the puzzle that Fashion Police Squad lays in front of you. The game's weapon combo system just has an intuitiveness to it that even when a new enemy is introduced, or you forget what gun works with what enemy, they just have pretty obvious tells, and the sound design, animations, and everything all just work beautifully towards making this gameplay work. And it's really just that simple. Sort of. On top of this satisfying puzzle-style combat system, you also have awesome level design that just gets more interesting and more complex as you progress through the game without any one style or gimmick really overstaying its welcome. Ridiculous movement options like swinging with your belt whip or greasing up the floor with soap in order to slide around the level faster. Yes, you heard that correctly. What I really want to talk about to hammer home the commitment to fun, the attention to detail, and the versatility of the core gameplay system is the bosses. Finally, we have an FPS game not named Ultrakill with truly fantastic bosses. Now, truth be told, no Fashion Police Squad boss is going to bring the pain of something like Minos Prime. They do test your skills and use the gameplay systems in fun ways, but none of them are really going to push your abilities as a gamer to their absolute limit. What they are instead is fun, hilarious, incredible spectacles that evolve in ways you will never expect. If that sounds cool to you, I highly recommend you skip ahead in the video so you can experience this stuff blind, because I'm going to spoil some things. But if you're not quite sold on the game yet, stick around because I'm pulling out the big guns to convince you how truly great it is. The first boss of the game, Hugo Boss, is a pretty simple one. He moves around a lot and throws projectiles at you that you must dodge or jump over. Meanwhile, you have to focus on coloring up his gray suit. There's some twists along the way, including him covering himself in large suited men, an early game enemy you'll already be familiar with at this point, that you need to use your stitching gun on in order to deal with, rather than your paint gun. It's simple, but a slick way to introduce the ways that the game's core gameplay gimmicks are utilized in boss fights. But the boss that I really want to talk about is this. Forged in the deepest parts of YouTube's comment section. It's a YouTube commenter, the scariest boss of all. I give you XX Uwu Senpai Swagman XX. Oh no! What the fuck? What the fuck? Okay, what am I doing here? Not that. Not that. Oh, that works, that works. Oh, gotta crouch, gotta crouch, gotta crouch, gotta crouch, gotta crouch. Oh my god. Oh, it's not working, it's not working. He's deflecting every bullet with his sword. Tried the wet one's primary fire. Okay. Oh, I fucking shorted him out. What is happening? Oh wait, that worked, that worked, that worked. Oh, I think I see, I think I see. Yeah, you can do that when he's glowing and then... Oh my god. Des, a hacker man trapped you inside one of his virtual reality mega servers. Use the wet ones to slide and jump forward until you reach the source and destroy it. 0010101. Oh my god. Holy shit. I love this. No, 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 no. No! No! I fucking, what is this? Stop! Come on, come on, come on, come on. Oh, belt whip it. There we go, there we go. Okay, right, he Oh god, it's happening again. Oh, no, what is this? Fucking Wolfenstein, bro. What, does this do something? Oh, you have to shoot him. Okay, it's like the mainframe. Oh my god. We're getting so low. We're so close now. We're so close. Okay, okay. Here it goes. Here it goes. Oh, fuck. Okay, here it comes. No. Oh, yes. Okay, okay, yeah. Oh, God. Down, 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 down. Come on. Oh, I did it. I did it. I did it. What now? I posted this pretty much exactly to my clip channel, and somehow 250,000 people watched it. I know this video will probably get a fraction of the views that did, but if you did see that clip as well, I hope I've shed a little more light on the amazing game that this boss came from. This is XX Uwu Senpai Swagman XX, or Hackerman, as he's thankfully referred to for pretty much the rest of the game. This boss very deliberately bends and twists the game in so many ways that it basically becomes unrecognizable. And yet, it's always grounded in the game's core mechanics. Bending genres and teleporting between digital worlds is such an interesting way to test your grasp on the game's individual mechanics, but yet it just works incredibly well, and I can't speak highly enough of it. I will at least leave the game's final boss mostly unspoiled, but trust me when I say this one goes just as many interesting and unexpected places. My only slight complaint is that the final phase of this one overstays its welcome just a little bit and relies on some pretty inconsistent RNG. But all in all, these three bosses make up a concise but damn impressive roster of bosses. And instead of going for quantity over quality, the quality of these three, each with multiple phases, gimmicks, and so on, really bookend the game's levels in fantastic ways. They're also just an excellent allegory for the quality, polish, and attention to detail present within the entire game. The overall premise of an FPS where you don't kill anyone is so well executed, I only have really minor complaints. For one, because you don't kill anyone, enemies don't just go away when you kill them. Their spiffed up, stylish counterparts just remain to cheer you on. And I like this from an aesthetic standpoint, but it's mildly frustrating from a gameplay perspective. The game does a little bit of work to fade them out so they aren't as much of a distraction in active combat, but there's just a bit of a mental disconnect when you kill or finish. No, that's not a good word either. When you deplete the health, no. When you do the thing to the enemies, they sort of just stay where they are. It's weird not seeing them explode into gibs or something. It's kind of a minor problem, but it speaks to an interesting trend in FPSs in general and how they communicate that you've dealt with an enemy. Fashion Police Squad falls just a tiny bit flat in this department, but it's really a minor problem when you consider how well the jarring stylistic shift from most of the FPS genre is dealt with otherwise. I have some other minor complaints like the gimmicky sniper sections that are fine for a bit, but just overstay their welcome by a little. I admire the game's attempts all along the way to inject more variety and pizzazz into the gameplay, but a few sections like this just fell a bit flat for me. Beyond that, my only other real tangible complaint is that I just wish there was more of this game. Whether it's more bonus levels, challenge or secret levels, whatever. Even a DLC, I mean, just give it to me right now. The game is a tiny bit on the short side. Again, it's all killer, no filler. And it was extremely refreshing for a retro-styled FPS to just release and not like be unfinished or in early access right off the rip. But what is there is so good that I just would love some more. Honestly, I didn't intend for this to become so much of a review of Fashion Police Squad. It's just a glowing recommendation for those that haven't checked it out yet. But this is definitely one of the most unique and fun retro FPS games I've played this year. And if you're someone who hasn't checked it out, maybe because of the premise or art style not really being your cup of tea, let my many favorable comparisons to Doom Eternal and the awesomeness of its bosses and just in general it being a fantastic game on its own merits be reason enough for you to give it a shot, despite the unorthodox appearance. It is genuinely a contender for my favorite FPS game of the year, and yes, I mean that even with all the great games that came out. It is extremely underrated, even despite its relative success, and a game that I believe will be looked back on as one of the defining games of the year of the boomer shooter. Alright, enough of that. If the cutesy, PG, scrubbed clean style of Fashion Police Squad still wasn't your thing, even despite my best efforts, how about something absolutely crunchy, filthy, and downright disgusting? Incision. Basically, if you looked at Scorn and were like, this is neat, but I'd trade the next-gen visuals for some actual gameplay, then boy, oh boy, do I have the game for you. Incision is what I can only describe as a traditional style boomer shooter that just has a lot of heart. No pun intended. I also reviewed the demo of this one a while back, and I called it something along the lines of promising. The demo featured a pretty interesting vertical slice of gameplay that I believe is now the 3rd level of episode 1, and it's honestly one of the best levels in the game, where you start out in a pretty tight enclosed area and you slowly strip away layers as a decaying city opens up to you. The city is Paris, canonically. Don't question it. Heard that is nuke Paris somehow. There will be no talk of nuking Paris in this Twitch chat, no matter how much you may want to do it, which I understand. But to anyone watching, we are definitely not planning on nuking Paris. Incompatible and lost, born as failures, spat out by the flesh, easy prey for the nail spitters. Most of them seem to wander in pairs. I thought that said Paris. I thought that said fucking Paris, bro. I'm losing my mind. Canonically, we're in Paris. This is all a pretty phenomenal spectacle, and as an entire premise, also offers quite a lot of variety in terms of gameplay. I think it maybe didn't quite click with me as much in the demo because it kind of just drops you right in instead of easing you in. But here in the episode 1 early access release, the game just has a lot more breathing room to work with when introducing you to weapons and gameplay elements and enemy types, etc. And then it just goes. Seriously, I nitpicked the movement in this game just a bit in the demo. It felt weirdly weighty with a jump that's more of like a mid-air hover than it is a jump. But I really came around to it as a whole package as I got a hang of it. I know with how many boomer shooters I play, it should be obvious. But it turns out that yet again, the name of the game is just embracing speed. The movement system has a really satisfying precision to it and offers you a surprising amount of control. Now the game's visual descent into madness will undoubtedly be compared to something like Dusk, or the crunchy brown, gray, and red palette to something like Quake, but unlike those games focusing on more of a momentum-based movement, Incision offers instead a metric fuck ton of control over your character. Again, this just took a bit of getting used to, but once I realized things like how much air control you have and that holding the sprint key actually speeds up your air strafing, I was moving around arenas and dodging enemy attacks like a pro. This feels like the intended way of playing the game. Enemy attacks feel designed to be dodged this way, arenas feel designed to be traversed this way, and so on. I can see it not necessarily clicking for some people, but when it does click, this game feels truly incredible to play. And I will bestow it the highest honor of feeling distinctly Incision. Like, there isn't really another game with the moment-to-moment gameplay and movement that I feel offers the same exact experience. Otherwise, of course, the game is, at least superficially, a pretty typical, albeit very good, boomer shooter. The guns are mostly your standard fare: pistol, shotgun, machine gun, rocket launcher, and they all have pretty fun, though relatively inconsequential, alternative fire options that serve more to just add some flair and variety to your playstyle rather than being go-to options all the time. One that I'd like to highlight in particular is the pistol. At first I thought spinning the pistol was literally just for style, until I learned that if you fire when the weapon glints, you fire a highly damaging critical shot. I think you overall might still be able to dish out more DPS by just shooting quickly and accurately with the standard fire, but goddammit if hitting those crit shots isn't incredibly satisfying. I'm just not that good at it. It's just not cutting it. It's just so not cutting it. Despite all of this, you'll still find that different weapons serve different niches. Different things will be good in different scenarios. Most enemies fall over fairly quickly, but their attacks are no joke. Many have fast-moving, ranged projectile attacks, and unless you're a master of the movement, you will get hit sometimes. Ammo is also a relative scarcity, although I found I pretty quickly got used to prioritizing finding ammo when I needed it. The only time I ever proper ran out was in the first level when I had quite a limited weapon selection. I think the game could maybe use a more seamless way to farm for ammo, since running out of ammo feels quite bad and helpless with no real alternative once you've farmed the map clean of its fixed pickups. But on that note, there's also one seriously interesting weapon that I would like to specifically highlight here. There is actually a weapon in this game with renewable ammo, and if the term
blood is fuel
means anything to you, watch on. This is the kitty, one of the most ridiculous and amazing weapon concepts I've ever seen in a boomer shooter. Basically, jibbing an enemy at close range will give you some charge on this weapon, and then using its primary or secondary fire will expend some of it. The primary fire shoots out these sticky tracking explosives, and since I know the Ultrakill fans are probably paying close attention now, the alt fire is something akin to Ultrakill's green rail cannon, sticking to an enemy and doing damage over time as they spew out blood and guts, which I realize might not seem like a ringing endorsement, but given that you can use it to then recharge the kitty, it's actually pretty cool. I truly don't mind a standard arsenal of FPS weapons as long as it's executed well, but as the game progresses, I wouldn't mind seeing some more truly weird stuff like the kitty. It fits extremely well in this creepy and bizarre universe, especially as the game descends further into madness. There is also an elephant in the room when it comes to this game, and it's probably the single thing, or rather two things, I guess, that have been discussed the most surrounding it. Difficulty and the save system, or lack thereof. Incision, at least as of writing this video, has no real quick save or checkpoint system. If you die fully, you just restart the level. If I'm not mistaken, at first I think the plan was to eventually roll out some sort of save system, but the latest I've seen is that it may just remain the way it is. I'm not doubting the developer's vision here, just stating what I've seen on Twitter and such. Incision is a game that was clearly made with challenge in mind, and this is great in my opinion. I played on the middle difficulty, which I would describe as like the equivalent of Doom's ultra violence. So less of like a standard difficulty and more of an I'm okay with dying a decent few times as I learn this game difficulty. I pretty much got what I asked for, which is good. I'm fairly decent at FPS games, so the hard difficulty is usually where I look to for the most balanced experience, and I pretty much got that. I died a couple times per level for the most part. The thing is, the deaths just felt so much more detrimental because it meant starting the level over, even from damn near the end sometimes. I'm not going to tell you how to feel about the save system in this game. I'm just going to talk about my own experience, including some pros and cons of it. I do think it's interesting, and given that so many FPS games use the same exact old exploitable quick save system, I think Incision's save system is interesting to examine just for being different. It is true that deaths in this game are extremely frustrating. Going back to the beginning of sometimes fairly long levels and essentially erasing all of your tangible progress is a real blow to the ego. It even made me leave the game to come back another day at one point. But setting aside my damaged FPS gamer ego, did it ultimately enhance my experience of the game in a way that a normal save system couldn't have? Yes and no. On one hand, I learned quickly that I couldn't just breeze right through the levels. I had to actually manage my ammo, explore, and learn the level to find resources and extra lives. I learned enemy spawn locations, the safest ways to traverse the arenas, and what weapons to use to clear arenas most efficiently and come out with enough ammo to still clear the next one. This is pretty unequivocally a good thing for Incision. It's a harsh but relatively elegant way to encourage you to play the way the game wants you to play. My issues mostly begin when the deaths start to stack up. Oftentimes my experience went something like, make it halfway through a level, die, make it a little further, die, make it a little further, die again, etc. By the time I actually complete the level, I feel like I've played through the beginning half or so of it so many times that there's nothing more I can possibly learn or gain from it. That's when it starts to feel a lot less like you're being forced to learn and get better, and more like you're just being punished. Now I'll talk more about bosses in a second, but another area where this system shows some seams is in boss levels. The first boss has a bit of an awkward and unnecessary lead up that is not necessarily awful, but a bit cumbersome to repeat if you die, while the second boss pretty much just has a hallway. Each level has a bit of the classic ammo and supplies dump at the beginning, which is helpful of course, but it ends up being a bit weird that you have to run around and pick everything up each and every time. It's little wrinkles like this that tell me that Incision could perhaps have just a little bit more finesse put into this system, while still retaining its unique identity and punishing challenge level. The other thing that I worry about a bit is that this system will either be stretched extremely thin by future levels, or that the design of future levels will actually be limited by it. Even just in episode 1, we've already seen some large levels with branching paths. In particular, the one where you have to disable the nerves. This was the toughest non-boss level for me, and I restarted it many times. Coincidentally, it was also one of my favorites. However, with the nature of the way this level is structured, I believe it could have made sense to have a checkpoint maybe in the center of the map. Perhaps maybe you would even have to expend a life to save at this checkpoint. I believe something like this could alleviate just enough of the frustration caused by the complete lack of a save system while still making the game extremely challenging and punishing. Having at least some option for intermittently saving level progress could honestly allow for the design of longer levels, larger levels overall, and tougher levels. At the end of the day though, I applaud Incision's commitment to something different. I believe if nothing else, it's valuable to discuss the merits of the save system when so much of the genre is afraid to stray from the norm. Now as promised, the last thing I want to talk about is the bosses in Incision. If you haven't come to realize this yet, there's two things that I care a lot about on this channel: great FPS games and awesome boss fights. The unfortunate truth is that those things don't overlap that often. Maybe that's a conversation for another day, but most FPS bosses honestly kinda suck. But much like Fashion Police Squad, Incision was a game that I was looking to break that mold and offer cool and challenging bosses. At least I had held that expectation of this game based on what the developer was showing off on Twitter. And I was not let down. Well, sort of. One of the bosses is cool, and the other boss is challenging. Let's talk about it. Spoilers ahead, obviously. The first boss you'll run into is the Feral Armament. My first encounter with it went something like this. Oh, okay, I wanted to stay up and see if there was like any, Okay, we got a boss. We got a boss. I don't know, it seemed pretty easy. I don't know. It seemed pretty easy, guys. But despite my first impression, this boss proved to actually be pretty simple. But I like it for a few reasons. It moves fairly slowly, telegraphs its attacks generously, and tests fairly basic skills. But as a first boss, it's very effective. Its primary attack is a volley of rockets that track pretty well. This will keep you on the move in order to dodge, and sitting at the center of a circular arena, you might be inclined to circle strafe around it. But the boss will slop down a damaging area of effect attack that you will have to avoid as you do so. It also has an arena-wide smash attack that you need to jump to dodge. So yeah, this boss pretty much tests all of the basic principles of movement that you'll use in Incision's combat fairly elegantly and without being overwhelming. It's simple and not too difficult, but effective. This boss, somewhat inexplicably, comes back for a round 2 a few levels later, with no changes except a different arena. Not only has this been still the only boss at this point, and bringing it back already seems extremely odd in light of that, but with the game's save system, dying to this boss after going through a fair bit of a pretty long level feels a bit cheap, since it sends you all the way back to the beginning. I hope this type of thing doesn't become a frequent occurrence unless the save system also gets some tweaks to accommodate. I was hoping the episode's final boss would build on the promising foundation the first boss laid out, but, well, it doesn't really, at least in my opinion. Given how good I felt almost the entire rest of Incision was, my only real major complaint was that I didn't enjoy this final boss very much. I don't think it's beyond saving though, I just would prefer to see a different approach in the future. I'll start with the good. The presentation is amazing at least, but immediately after that is where it starts falling apart. It took me far too long to figure out what was even being asked of me here, but I eventually figured out the boss has 3 phases, and in each phase you're not fighting the weird alien baby creature in the middle. You're actually fighting these 4 tentacle things that will shoot a variety of attacks at you. Now the problem with this is that you have to stay mobile to dodge their attacks, which can overlap in sometimes awkward and inconsistent ways. You have only a pretty small and cumbersome arena in the middle to work with, and keeping your eyes on all of the tentacles at once to know what each of them is doing and when they're going to fire is a nearly impossible task. On top of that, even with the wealth of ammo dumped on you at the beginning of this fight, maintaining enough ammo in the guns that are the most effective at dealing with these ranged targets is also quite a task. And then after you've taken out all 4 of these, your actual fight with the boss itself involves walking up to it and using your melee on its now exposed brain 3 times. Yeah. Maybe there was some nuance to this fight that I missed. Maybe it was trying to teach me something that I just wasn't picking up on, but I found it challenging in a pretty annoying way and ultimately not all that fun. Which is a shame because goddamn does it look cool at least. Maybe this was supposed to be more of a spectacle, but if that's the case, it's awfully challenging still. Yeah, I'm just not sure, but this one didn't quite land for me. I do have hopes that this game will still provide cool boss fights. The first boss was evidence enough that the formula is there, and the experiment that is the episode end boss just didn't quite pan out. But despite that lackluster final encounter, Incision really delivered the goods pretty much from front to back in its first episode. What, on the surface level, seems like a fairly standard boomer shooter actually reveals some pretty bold design choices along the way, and I think more fans of this genre need to give this game a shot. And I think as more content gets rolled into this game, it will go from underappreciated gem to genre classic in no time, and I can't wait to see it. So far here, I've talked about an FPS game that was atypical in its presentation, and one that's more typical in presentation, but with some bold gameplay decisions. But I do have one more game that I want to talk about, and that is Cultic. Now, Cultic is not necessarily trying to reinvent the wheel anywhere. You'll probably hear words like blood and Dusk thrown around liberally in discussions surrounding this game. But, you know, people probably compared the original Halo to, like, Quake as well, and the moral of the story is those people are stupid. What I'm trying to say is that although there's not really any one thing about Cultic that makes it super different, it's a culmination of a bunch of little systems, ideas borrowed here and there, and all pieced together into a fantastic package. I mean, just look at this. Oh, I'm gonna take damage. No, I want the... I'm gaming here. Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. No, 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 no. Health? No, no more guys up there? Woo! Oh my god. Holy shit, bro. Oh, this combat is so good. And that was the first level. It pretty much only gets better from there. The best way I could describe Cultic's combat is balanced. It isn't really fast-paced, it isn't really slow-paced. It's moderate-paced, tactical, and rewards good snap decision-making. But even that doesn't really paint the full picture. It can be fast-paced. In fact, you can actually move ridiculously fast with some of the goofiest movement tech I've ever seen, which is kick B-hopping. But you'll probably find the best results by slowing down a bit and thinking of how best to approach a combat encounter, at least on a high level, and then just going. The best of Cultic's gameplay comes from these moments when you feel like you're about to get overwhelmed and you use your arsenal and your wits to overcome. And the mechanics of the game lend themselves really well to creating moments like this. The game rewards accuracy, big time. Hitting headshots not only deals massive increased damage, but will also trigger quick bursts of adrenaline that slow down time, giving you just a little bit of a breather to make decisions, switch weapons, drop a bundle of dynamite, etc. The game gives you ample tools to deal with groups of weaker enemies, like the aforementioned dynamite, Molotovs, and later a grenade launcher, just to name a few. But you have to use them smartly because they're not only a bit limited in their availability, but the cultists will do absolutely insane shit like kick dynamite back at you. Wait. Oh no! They kicked it at me! What the fuck? They kicked it at me! They're kicking the dynamite back at me! No! Yeah. Anyways, what I'm trying to illustrate here is that even though Cultic on surface level can feel like a bit of a greatest hits, kitchen sink style approach to a boomer shooter, almost everything here has a place. Almost everything is useful, satisfying, and fun to play around with. And it all contributes to this tense, pacey, and constantly flowing combat that makes Cultic as awesome as it is. Now, I'm not going to do as deep of a dive into Cultic's gameplay and design because this game has actually had quite a bit more discussion and hype surrounding it than the other two games I talked about. But if there's one thing to take away from this, just play this game. But Cultic made me realize something. Maybe for some of you, your experience was different. I played Dusk for the first time at the end of last year, and Dusk is now easily one of my favorite games. But I was primed for Dusk. I had tried other retro FPS games. Boomer shooter wasn't a diminutive term anymore, it was more of a term of endearment, and I knew to push through the janky, outdated surface level presentation to receive what was an ultimately amazing experience. But I think about that first experience with Dusk a lot, and how, for someone, that might have been their gateway to this genre. Maybe at first being curious why a game that looked like that had such glowingly positive reviews, and then slowly being sucked into that insane world that is Dusk. And especially as I played through Cultic, I couldn't help but think about how far this genre has come, even in just a few short years since then. Both games made predominantly by a solo developer, in Cultic's case, Jason Smith. Both impressive genre-defining games with superficially similar settings and presentations. And yet when you look at Dusk, you can see the undeniable DNA of something like Quake. It's not to say that Cultic isn't definitely a boomer shooter at its core, with roots in those very same places, but more than Cultic is defined by any of the games it's like, or just some nebulous nostalgic vibe, or retro appearance. It just feels like a great game. I can feel the conversation shifting around this genre. Ultrakill's Act 2, which was just a several level long update, launched with almost as much hype as some entire AAA games launching on PC. In fact, I rarely, if ever, see people referring to Ultrakill as a boomer shooter at all anymore. If anything, it's become a new benchmark of its own that games in the genre are compared to. I remember when indie platformers started gaining popularity because of how accessible they were to develop, and before anyone knew what happened, the genre had produced such masterpieces as Celeste and Katana Zero. In fact, I almost made a whole video about how the term boomer shooter is outdated because of this exact thing. Truth be told, I do actually like the term. It's catchy and it paints a pretty consistent picture of what type of game you're getting into, with a term of more or less endearment that has, at this point, been adopted by the community. I mean, I used it in the title of this video, for God's sake. But I wonder if it's unintentionally reductive to a genre that is actually incredibly innovative in basically all but the graphical department. And even though the real point of this video was to showcase a few games from 2022 that I liked and didn't get a chance to talk about otherwise, in the process of writing about these games, I realized that this was actually just a love letter to this genre and how far it's come in the past year. This, to me, is what struck me most about a game like Cultic, and Fashion Police Squad, and Incision, and Ultrakill, and Prodeus, and Turbo Overkill, Cruelty Squad, White Hell, and so on. And if there's one thing you take away from this video, it's to keep supporting games like these, and the amazing things that indie devs are doing with this awesome genre. Forever. Thanks for watching.
Hit that like
This is
button.
alright.
Smash that bell, hit that bell button, hit
Destroy
this
my
bell
pussy.
button.
Subscribe to Dumper Man.